Hello, beautiful, divine, significant, worthy, and valued everyday powerful women of the world. Welcome to the Startup Stories podcast, where the ambitious everyday woman is heard, held, and served in life and business. Relatable stories to keep you sane, grounded, and growing as you expand yourself and deliver your purpose to the world. I just stretch every time I say that intro. I feel it from such a deep place. So thank you for being here. Thank you for coming along for another episode. I cannot wait to share the incredible and loving and authentic Amanda Johnson with you, the story oracle, joining us today. And we've just met, and I can just feel her naturalness already. And in rescheduling this episode, I think about 3 times, just a deep appreciation that I want to honor for a moment because it allowed me to keep my life simple in asking and perceptually risking a reschedule, as a people pleaser and a pusher of, well, I said I would do this, so I have to do it. And in just saying, hey, I am flawed and I'm overwhelmed, and can we just bump? And if you don't want to come on the show after the umpteenth time of rescheduling, that's fine. And Amanda's like, no, it's all good, babe. No problem. So let that allow you permission to be flawed and to own that in authentic vulnerability, because it will be received. So, and you know that with all of this divine rescheduling, we are going to knock it out of the park today, right,
There's
Amanda?
some sort of bigger plan
So, you guys, Amanda is
going on there for
known,
us, I think.
yeah, she's known as the story oracle. She partners with organizations and individuals helping professionals and creatives and coaches, parents who want to use story, writing, and community to open portals of reconnecting and belonging. She's grown this business, developed beautiful branding and message clarity, building a beautiful community, and then also super fun having her son as a business partner who's just moved out about 2 years ago. So it's creating a whole life benefit and business benefit in her world. And that's what we're going to talk about. She's also really grown as a woman throughout this journey, and we're going to share that experience with you as well. So welcome, 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 Amanda.
Thanks for having me. I
Thrilled
love
to.
that part about staying grounded and sane. Ah,
Mhm,
we need
mhm.
that so badly when we're growing business, doing anything really, but growing business especially.
It's so confronting, right? It
Yeah.
pushes on the core of what you think your value is,
Hmm.
right?
Yep.
And your value is not your business. Your business is something that you do to
Hmm.
make money and to serve others. But who you are is completely separate from that. Although you do get to benefit and grow as you get comfortable with the discomfort of starting a business and staying with it.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I really think we talked a little bit about being moms before we hit record. And, as I was saying, like motherhood is the absolute most beautiful spiritual journey. I mean, talk about confronting
Yeah.
being
Yeah.
human. You're like, I will not mess you up. Like I got accidentally messed up. But business is like right there. I mean, it's like right underneath parenting because that's the thing is the only real limits that we have as entrepreneurs are our own limits. We get to, I don't want to offer that service. Okay. I don't want to create that product. All right, fine. I get to make all the decisions here. But when you do want something really bad and you know that you're meant for it, and then you hit up against that first limit, and you think,
Right.
this is just me.
Right.
This is just this stupid old belief or story that I have running. And so yeah, it's been yeah, second to only one of
Second to
my
only one. And
favorite spiritual journeys.
like a different unconditional love than a sweet baby child
Right?
that
It's
can look
true.
at you, goo goo, or say just the right thing to melt your heart again. We do make it so much more about ourselves. So, where did the story oracle come from?
Do you love good stories?
Yeah.
I'm dating myself a little, but The Matrix is one of my favorite movies. It
Yeah.
got me through. It just happened to come out when my entire world was falling apart because I had woken up to this idea that maybe everything that I had been taught wasn't exactly true. And so I felt a lot like Neo, but my favorite character was the Oracle.
Mm.
Because remember when he went to her and he said, you know, Morpheus thinks I'm the one. Am I the one? And she handed him a cookie and was like, I don't know, are you?
Yeah.
And he just saw him like, damn it, I really thought I was going to get an answer.
Yeah. Validate me.
And I loved it because that was something I was learning during that phase, having grown up in a space where I was given answers all the time. I
Mhm.
had questions, I was given answers, the answers.
Mm.
And when I got to college and I started to realize that some of those answers just didn't hold up to history and logic,
Yeah.
then, I thought, okay. And I had this one powerful facilitator in my program who always said, if you walk out of this classic books program with more answers than questions, we failed you. And I
Right.
thought, the power is in the question.
Yeah.
And so that's how I raised my son. You know what? Let me not pretend that I have a bunch of answers at
Yeah.
the ripe old age of 23. No, kid, we are figuring this crap out together.
Yeah.
And so it was just a bunch of questions. And, you're sharing that story about your daughter. And I was thinking, that's exactly what it was like growing up with him is I grew up with him. I would ask him questions. Hey, my first networking meeting was his first day at preschool.
Okay.
And I was terrified. He was so excited about school,
Yeah.
but I was dealing with all of my limits of going into places and not feeling welcome before, or feeling like I was too much, or fill in all of those blanks.
Hmm.
And I asked him, buddy, if you had a friend who was, doing something new for the first time, what would you tell them? What advice would you give them? And he said, I would tell them to be brave and ask for help.
Mm.
That. And I thought, questions. I get the best answers when I ask questions. So I'm an oracle. I ask people questions. Even when I have really clear visions, they show up in my world. They're like, I want to work on this project. I want to take this message to the next level. I want to build a brand. And I can see a whole thing.
Hmm.
But I've learned that it's really important for people to own their own story, message, and vision in the time that they can. And so if I share too much at the beginning of what I see, talk about them hitting their limits real fast.
Right.
So Oracle or story Oracle asks questions.
So this was like a mirror to my face because my proving energy has to do with having the answer. So if anybody watches Friends, when Monica goes to that, I think it's a book study club or something with Phoebe, and they're in the classroom, Monica's like, oh, no, like, that's my undercurrent. And the big
Yeah.
lesson is I don't need to prove myself. I want to
Mhm.
support people. That's where the gift is. And that does come from the question side and letting people come forward with their answers. So that sounds like you've practiced the work that you now offer as a service.
And I've failed. I mean, I've practiced it and learned very hard lessons. When I'm
Yeah.
stepped outside of the question,
Yeah.
things not turned out very well. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So then tell us, like, how the business formed as a result of this lived experience.
Well, I wasn't ever going to be an entrepreneur. I don't know how often people grow up thinking I'm going to grow my own business. I know my 4-year old did. Like he knew from the time he was little, he's going to build his own stuff. But, entrepreneurialism was in my family, but it was not well respected. The people who'd done that and kind of stepped out of the traditional pathway and they made a lot of money and weren't doing all the great things with it. And so it wasn't something that was on my radar until I had my own idea for a book project.
Mhm.
And I'd had that idea because I was working in an online writing instruction company with one of my such a great mentor, most amazing educator I've ever met. And we had gone out to pitch her project to people, and we'd gone to entrepreneurs as my
Mhm.
first like engagement with a whole community of entrepreneurs. And they said, no, no, we don't want you to teach us how to write well. We need you to quickly fix what we have written because it is not working. The manuscript doesn't feel good. The brochures aren't working, the websites. And so I had this little editing business. And, it's a nice thing to do when my kid was really little, online writing instructor. I could do it on my own time and really a nice thing. But I figured I was probably going to have like a regular 9 to 5 someday.
Mhm.
And eventually I got to the point where I started to feel terrible giving people their manuscripts back because they'd spent all of this time working on. Have you written a book yourself? Like
No.
you just
Yeah.
you spend all this time and energy and sweat equity and get through all of those limiting beliefs like who would give a crap about this, and oh my god, I'm going to put it in front of a professional, and all of this crap people have to go through to finally get it to that point to have that person say, oh my gosh, you have an amazing idea here, let me just hack this thing up into a million pieces, reorganize it, and amp up the storytelling a little. And they were grateful for my superpower, but I could just feel what was happening inside of them. Like,
Mhm.
was that all of that time wasted?
Mhm.
I don't think so. But I thought I could probably shave a whole bunch of time off of people's and sanity, like the stress that comes when you don't know what you're doing or if you're doing it well.
Yeah.
And so that was the beginning of my very first business of like, okay, let's work with people from the beginning. And I tried so hard to get these busy professionals, not necessarily entrepreneurial, but some of them, but just busy helping professionals, people who like you are out there in the world. Would you say you called yourself a people pleaser, like out there like doing so much for so many other people that when it came to their own project, they wouldn't make the time.
Right.
Something else always became more important.
Yeah.
And so I realized quickly that I had to kidnap them into retreat settings. And that's when like all of the all of my experience and expertise converged in this moment where this woman started telling her story after 3 days of not speaking and freaking me out because it was my first retreat. I
Yeah.
was just like, oh my God,
Yeah.
this isn't working. um, and so she started telling her story and she ended up in a pile of tears on the floor. And I heard this little voice say, this is what you're really up to. People want to write books to share their true intention with the world, but they've forgotten who they really were before the story happened. And writing a book and telling your story and having to wrestle with all of your beliefs and ideas and the details and the plot twists, it takes you back to a time where you realize, like, okay, these things happen to me, but they don't have to define me.
Mhm.
And that's when I saw every single thing that I had been trying to do in my life that just didn't work out, teaching, journalism, writing instruction,
Uh,
all of it. And I realized, okay, I get it now. I've just been equipped. I've been getting into a place long enough to pick up a tool or a
mhm.
skill, and then I'm ripped out of there. And I think I'm totally ruining my life. When am I ever going to get my crap together?
Mm.
But nope, it was also that I could in that moment realize like, oh, this is my calling.
Right. To show somebody what's already inside them and then empower them to express it from their deeper self all through them. And then you provide like a support system to draw it out. And this is like teaching them how to fish instead of fishing for them, which was a
Yes.
bit of the editing and the before.
Mhm.
And that's far more sustainable because that's the transformation, right? And then as a result of realizing that, you're able to
Mhm.
transform.
Yeah. I mean, I haven't. Oh, sorry. There was a
Go
delay.
ahead, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, if that doesn't happen, then what happens when, and I think we see some of these people out in the world who haven't done this type of work. They've had someone ghostwrite their book, or they've kind of played surface over their story and not really wrestled with those hard moments. And they're not connecting with their audience. Um, Sometimes they're super emotionally dysregulated while they're trying to help other people because their own trauma is coming up. And writing is such a powerful way to, like I said, just wrestle with all of that and come to a place of ownership that when you're called to the next thing, the coaching, the speaking, the training in front of rooms, you have that infrastructure built.
Yeah. And that self-trust, right?
Yes.
To know where your expertise lies and where your gift of service and message comes from.
Yep.
Deep connection. So, what's changed for you now, having that level of clarity and knowing what to march forward with as the story oracle?
Well, I mean, it's been a whole journey. I mean, I feel like, in fact, I had to write a book about it. You can't make this story up. I asked 20 of my authors that I had worked with to write their stories of working with me because the craziest stuff happened. I mean, the magic and mess that happened while they were was so beautifully orchestrated, like you were saying today. Like maybe, there was some bigger, higher plan for the divine timing. We saw that over and over with these projects that, high performing, overachieving women were like, what is wrong with me? Why can't I write this chapter? And it's like, let stuff happen, right? Like maybe you need to cry before you can write this chapter. Maybe you need to really sink in or see where this story is still showing up in your life and address that before you can write this chapter. And so at every single phase in my business and with every client that came through, it was pushing my limits too, right? My own personal healing was being activated at every single, story that I didn't realize, ooh, that I still haven't worked through that thing,
Mhm.
or a safety situation in the community that I wasn't sure how to deal with. And I had to reassess what safety was, what it meant for me. And
Mhm.
so every year, every messenger, every new program, every new service, it's been a dig deeper for what's the other part of my calling that I haven't brought forth yet, what is the other part of, the other shadow that I have that's lurking that I need to go grab and reclaim and bring it into the light. And so, everything from conversations about safe, what does integrity look like when you're in front of a room and you have the ability to use storytelling to really move and influence and impact people, and then you have your coach in your ear saying this is the time to sell. I, I don't think so. That doesn't feel good to me because I know how suggestible they are right now, and I don't want them to sign up just because they're suggestible and I'm suggesting it. I want them to go home and use, right? And so all of those different things, from the personal transformation to the professional choices of how I would deliver and how I would market and sell, everything has dramatically changed and refined across time.
I'm feeling some things very deep listening to that portion, Amanda, and try and pull a couple of them out. One is that you growing as a coach meant that you're not promising, I mean, you're there to help navigate towards an outcome, but you are working on that outcome with the client together.
Mhm.
And this means that it's not about having to be perfect and that their success means something negative about you, but that you can lean in together to see what the journey needs to be to get to that transformation and outcome.
Yeah.
And that is a very freeing place to work from that comes back to your foundation of asking questions to lead forward rather than what I was saying about trying to bookend with the answer and capture it like, I know, I'll get you there, no problem. Like, no, because I worked in that energy.
Yeah.
I did. I would show up with online business managers, some of my roots, and I had these crazy expectations from what I was learning about the industry of having to be like a perfect robot, that could execute things because that's what I said my training was. And what I've learned is to just be the person and to be vulnerable while learning and increasing certainty of the gifts and talents that are unique to self. And that was very beautifully described and discerned when you're in a room and reading and holding the space of safety, really for the greater good rather than a personal gain. Because building a business, yeah, you got to make money, etc., but it can provide so much bigger returns when you bring in integrity and like authentic uh, leadership around what's most needed at
Yeah.
any one time, right?
Yeah.
And then that's how you can really grow
Yeah.
alongside what. And the other part that was coming up is like, rather than resisting, um, rather than resisting like discomfort or so-called lack of results or rushing, is leaning into those moments to settle and extrapolate what clues are being given to you
Mhm.
instead to help you along the way.
Yeah. And I really do think it all, I think it all really does come back to that safety piece because, I mean, who feels safe in this world right now, right? Like there's a lot of crazy stuff going on. And so where do we get that sense of safety? Because if we don't have it, it's very hard to do anything that we feel called to do.
Mhm.
And so it doesn't benefit individuals for me to even own all of the safety in the room, right? Which is what I'm doing when I'm trying to give answers and make sure that they get all of these ideas in the right order that I think is the right order, or that they do everything in their marketing in the exact right steps that I think,
Mhm.
instead of like, let's see where the lack of safety is, and then let's say to that person, like we would say to a kid,
Mhm.
how are what do you feel like is the absolute best way for you to do this right now? Because I'm not going to ask you to do something that feels so incredibly risky and unsafe that you feel like I might lose my partner, I might lose my financial status, I might, all of these scary things that are part of that entrepreneurial journey. We invest in ourselves and we ask from the people around us. And
Mhm.
so the risk is high. And so I'm always looking for where's the lack of safety, and what can you do to increase it right there so that you can stretch just a little bit more.
Mhm.
And yeah, that's always been mirrored in the way that I'm trying to coach, in the way that I'm selling, in the way that I'm trying to conduct business, in the way that I was raising my kid. I didn't want him to feel like I was responsible for his safety in the world. He needed to know how to create that for himself and maintain it. And when I wasn't around anymore.
Uh, it's a like an empowered encouragement.
Hmm.
You have to put your own work in to get to
Yeah.
an outcome. And it's not abdicating responsibility or, program promise,
Mhm.
but it's really holding them accountable for their own result, which then allows you to serve what like from a to me I would say like from a more beautiful place.
Mhm.
And that's been a big lesson again for me of letting go of this perfectionism and of this sales pitch rather than really going on a journey together to
Yeah.
discover what we can create, because it is easier with somebody than on your own. Two brains better than one, two souls better than one. And when there's chemistry aligned, which you would feel with your
Mhm.
clients, there's more space to move in that journey together. That's really
Yeah.
profound, really profound. So with all of that being said, where are you being, like, how old is Story Oracle by now?
Well, originally the business was called True to Intention.
Mm,
And then I had a giant narrative healing experience almost 2 years ago now. And I realized actually right after that experience that the entire reason that I created my business was to heal the wound that I healed during that experience. And so my business kind of went, I'm done. I'm
mm,
good.
mm.
Everything that was moving, all of the referrals, all the everything just kind of came to a screeching halt.
Mm.
And I thought, well, that's fascinating. It's kind of scary too, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Um, And so by that time we had created Saved by Story, which is the publishing house. So people were doing writing and transformation at True to Intention and then coming over to Saved by Story to do branding, publishing, impact stuff.
Okay.
And so I just folded all of those services into Saved by Story. And because of that narrative experience that I had, which, I've been having experiences like that and watching other people have experiences like that for 2 decades.
Mhm.
But it was so intense that I realized I need to take this out beyond, like, I really I need another, like a speaking and facilitation platform. And that's when I built the Story Oracle, because that's the place where I'm taking all of the narrative medicine tools that I've acquired over 20 years of helping people write
Mhm.
and use story in community, and I'm taking it to parents and educators and the
Mhm.
mental health profession. Because you think that narrative medicine kind of came out of this idea of health, in the health world, and then brought into the mental health space, but they're not using the tools. I went to a conference last year and I did a 3-hour workshop, and the clinicians in the room were stunned. I mean, they were like, "Oh my God, this makes my job so much easier." And they came up to me for days afterwards saying, "I use this tool with my client. I use this." And I thought, "Oh my gosh, I have this whole suite of tools that I have been using, that people who understand trauma, who understand, growth mindset and want to help other people achieve something or overcome something, like, this is just going to accelerate it." So that's when the Story Oracle was born.
And so that sounds like a stretching and, the famous pivot word in the entrepreneurial
Yeah,
journey.
yeah.
And
How do you feel about that? How do you kind of took.
for me, pivot, well, because of Friends, so Ross and the couch, I mean, I love
Mhm,
I love that TV show. And um if I'm truly gonna, live in peaceful empowerment, which is a big part of my messaging, then I gotta be willing to just pivot with what comes my way. I can't be too attached. I can have like a lighthouse that's helping me stay aligned on my journey, but I have to be willing to go through the great adventure obstacle course
mhm,
along the way. And
mhm,
I've had some very confronting truths come out and had to deal with them as of late. And, as my spiritual wisdom matures, as I like to think, it's probably ego thought there, but um, it's like, okay, I can face this. I can deal with this, even if it's super awful while I'm in it. I I can resist it. It will never go away. It will show up again, or I can just do the work now
mhm,
and try and get through it. And in doing
mhm.
that, I get to grow as a person. So, pivoting, I think is
Yeah.
great. It's pivotal.
Mhm. Well, and I think that sometimes pivoting looks like, I mean, in 2013, I launched my first book and I had the most magical 3 days of my life facilitating. And, and then the second time I had this massive fallout that always happened whenever I hit this pinnacle moment in my business.
Mhm.
And I thought, you know what? I think I'm not going to listen to all of my coaches who are saying, "Look, Amanda, you have the platform and the speaking, and now you have the book, and now you have all this. It's time to go. 6 figures, 7 figures,
Yeah.
right? Go, 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 go." Meanwhile, I'm like hemorrhaging money because the last year, and then something happened with my physical health this time. And I thought, you know what? I'm just not willing to
Mhm.
pay the price.
Mhm.
Because, like you said, I can push. I know how to push. I have a whole lifetime of getting a PhD in pushing.
Yeah.
But if I do that, the consequences are going to be so high, because I lost so much money and I had something really scary happen to my health. And so why not just let off the gas for a minute, which was scary, right? Like, I'm not marketing anymore. I'm not really taking on a lot of clients anymore, because I have to allow myself time to really sink in and say, what the hell is this story that
Mhm.
has me stuck? I'll never get past that point that I want to get to for impact and income, I just won't let myself. It's not happening. I keep hurting myself
Yeah.
in the process.
Yeah.
So how about I figure out why I do that and
Yes.
then push?
Yes. Or like come at it from that
But it's scary,
stronger.
coaches and friends.
Yeah.
It's
That's,
because I
so relatable because I drank all the Kool-Aid and I slept in it and I like sold it. Yeah, just it was always in the Kool-Aid. Couldn't be away from the Kool-Aid of the coaching industry's promises and, exorbitant amounts of money without implementation, integration, and actual work on self.
Mhm.
And so I was just swimming blind. And now I get to wake up, come out of that, and remove this attached outcome that I was chasing and just be in it. And it is so much more flippin' spacious,
Yep.
peaceful, and enjoyable. And I was asked earlier today, like, you still want to quit your job and entrepreneur full time? I'm like, I don't know. It doesn't matter. I just want to coach. I just want to share this message and I want to help the everyday woman feel what I'm feeling and let that purpose come out rather than this, what you were just describing of like, it felt like being used by other coaches to have another sensational testimonial.
Yep. That's a really good way to put it.
And that is toxic sales. It's toxic promises for like selfish benefit of somebody with an agenda rather than this holistic real journey that extends far beyond the business and the business's so-called success or revenue, right? Who you are as a person. Who are you going to die proud of having been as a woman of integrity and of character and of care versus, oh, I crushed $1 million a month for 10 years, blah, blah. Even if you gave it all to orphans and malaria, like, so it's a bigger picture. And that's a beautiful journey. And that I think speaks to one of the questions I was going to ask as to where are you being stretched? It sounds like you're being redefined and refined to not lessen the impact by any stretch, but to enrich how you deliver that impact for yourself, which will benefit those who are going to receive it too. And that you have freaking time. Like we're young, right? We
Yeah.
have time.
Yeah.
We have
Yeah. Well, and one of the things that I said, I remember saying very early to all of my coaches was, look, I don't know when you expect me to do all of this, but I have a husband who is having a really hard time at home. I have a little kid and I have an ailing grandmother who I'm caregiving. So we need to find new and better ways for me to grow business because me being out in the world 100 million hours and speaking, like that will be the game when these other priorities. And so the stretch now is that I'm here. My son is left home.
time.
My husband's doing really well, no longer caregiving.
Yeah.
And it is very much after that narrative healing, I built everything that I built with that wound.
Mm. Yep.
Everything.
Yep.
um the business, the systems inside the business, my fast response that everybody loved, was that codependent, like the thing that made me, kind of a little victim to that industry that you're talking about for a while. It's like all of that also had to die because that identity was like no longer an issue for me. And so all of a sudden, I had to let go of all of the regular business and the way that I was doing business, and all of my relationships had to adjust because, newsflash, all my relationships have been built with that wound too. Who is this person who doesn't care as much what we think?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
how do we relate to her now, and I didn't think it would take as long as it has been taking
Okay.
to do that, but I mean, I would say it took about 18 months of real letting everything, not trying to push, not trying to, and also being honest about the fact that I was letting go of something that was really beautiful. There was a bittersweet grief that came along with that too, that I had to, spend a month on the floor watching some stories about grief in order to process the depths of it. So that's the stretches. Um, what I watch a lot of my clients do actually, which is, okay, I have all this mastery,
Yeah,
right? Decades of mastery. And I'm also in this new space where I'm wanting to come at the mastery from a different angle or through a different sense of being, something that's more whole.
that's what
But
I
I've
think.
never done that before. And so I kind of feel like a newbie, which makes me forget how masterful I am at some things, right? Like I went to my first networking meeting locally. I don't know how long it's been since I've done this, but I'm like, I need to get involved in the community here. So I went and I just laughed at myself when they asked me to stand up and give my introduction because I'm like, I am so still like in between
Uh-huh.
defining myself. What is it really? And I know what this is. I've been here before and I know it's just going to take, sitting in it and remembering the mastery and pulling it in, probably doing a lot of writing like I ask my clients to do,
Mm,
and just practice of this new self or this more whole self, I guess is probably the truer way to say that.
yeah, that $1 million lesson of the year. Let's put it on t-shirts. That you mastered the doing, and now you're matching it with mastering the being
Mm-hmm.
to go together. And that's a new um, evolution of everything that is. And you have to let it incubate. That's what you're describing,
Mm-hmm.
right? Is letting it just think instead of, okay, what, and
Yeah.
try and jump to another outcome that will just keep in that old past pattern.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where the real growth can happen
Mm-hmm.
on the new
But it's
evolution.
high trust, girl. It is high trust. I
Right?
mean, we have this map that Aaron and I designed after we wrote our book.
Yeah.
And, right before impact through leadership is faith and destiny, because there's always that point in every hero's journey where they've given everything.
That's,
All of their allies have given everything. The mentors are gone.
yeah.
And they're like, wow, something bigger than me better show up real quick, or else I might not see the end of this
Or
story.
I have to show up now, right? We just
Yeah.
watched Moana 2 yesterday, and she has that moment,
Mm-hmm.
right, where she's got to face what her destiny is, and she has
Yeah.
to be brave enough to jump into it. Because you're right, all of a sudden you're standing on the edge of the cliff and it's up to you, and you have to
Mm-hmm.
go forward because
Mm-hmm.
others are depending on it. And,
Mm-hmm.
it's dramatized, but that recipe has worked for thousands of years, the hero's journey, right?
Yep.
And there's a reason for it. It holds us to our potential for us to decide what we're made of and whether or not we're going to be
Mm-hmm.
willing to
Yeah.
see.
Yeah, and I think too, this idea of destiny and that there's a timing for things. There are seasons, there are astrological seasons. That narrative healing, when I went to work with an astrologer, he pointed to the two ends of this phase for me. The first end was like the day that I met my first client for that business. The end date of that was the day that I had that narrative healing. Now, I that is like masterfully orchestrated, right? Like that's way bigger than anything I could imagine figuring out, let alone, I mean, it was months afterwards and I looked at the chart with him and I was like, oh my God, it was perfect.
Mhm.
And so, there's all of this like trust that we have to develop, yes, in self, but also in like the world and what's higher and the seasons and like
Yeah.
everything changes, and there are seasons of incubation and there are seasons of launch
Mhm.
and impact. And then there are seasons of coming back to your core and getting quiet again. And for those of us people pleaser pusher type, those are really hard. They're hard.
Which is why it's important to go through them.
Yeah. And
Leaning
try
in,
to,
the growth is in the discomfort, and like,
yeah,
it can be so freeing. So like with the release of what I've gone through, I'm still self-regulating into the new normal, and that's what I hear you describing. And
yeah.
having to kind of catch up and consolidate now to a new program. It's a bit like learning a new language or
Mhm.
a new city, right?
Mhm.
But it comes with such a more purified sense of self, and I'm so grateful for that. And it's worth everything that has happened and will continue to happen as a result, and for it to be used for good,
Yeah.
and to be curious and
Yeah.
excited about that. Back to
Yeah.
the questions again, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And to be, like we were saying, when we're out there in the world and we're wanting to, change it, we don't change it with words. Yeah,
Mhm.
words make a big difference. And we don't change it with our actions, even. We change it with our essence, with our energy. And so when we do things like pull a part of ourselves back and it changes everything, it's like, okay, like I get it. This is going to be a completely different space.
Mhm.
But I don't know. I'm not sure how to do that all just yet. And
Yeah,
it's kind of you know, exciting at once.
it is. That's the what's next, right? You got to
Mhm.
venture forward and see. So, what would you tell your past self now from your present self as words of wisdom when she was unsure or thought she had it all figured out?
I think I would give her a really good lesson in seasons.
Mm,
I do. I think we are missing that so badly in our culture.
mhm.
This idea of ebb and flow and growth and incubation, and it's just the head trash that I normally have to deal with in these seasons always comes because no one taught me that they're okay. And they're not just okay, they're necessary.
Yeah,
They're necessary.
yeah.
And if I could just let go and relax into it, I could maybe, you know, enjoy it.
Mhm. Yeah, it's true. The whole natural world is built around timing of seasons, night and day, hot and cold, etc.
Mhm.
And winter is a rest period. So why would we think that we can just plug along? Like I got so annoyed as climate change happens, people get so fixated that like December and January are the snow months. And I'm like, they're just sort of reference points to help keep time organized. But if snow starts in February and it's February and March, we still have 2 months of it. It's just shifted. Why are we so stuck on an existing kind of, man-made system?
Yep.
And that's allowing life's experiences to massage you and to go with them truly in that way, rather than either, stay so structured that you can't pivot or relax,
Mm.
or that you're just constantly resisting what is happening instead of
Yeah.
allowing it to happen.
Yeah. You remind me of I wrote a blog several years ago. I don't know if you ever get this. Like I don't write if I don't feel it.
Right.
And sometimes when I feel it, it's like 1 a.m. Like I
Yeah.
get that, like it all snaps together because
Yeah.
it's quiet or whatever. And I laughed to tears for like 3 hours while I was working on on this blog. And it was about just what you're saying, like how we come at something. And I was comparing, raising a message or a business like raising a child. And if you come at it with so much structure, I see you. I know exactly what you're supposed to turn into. I'm going to make sure that you get shoved into this box and this matrix and it's going to be just like this. What kind of energy are you going to get back from that project? Right? On the other hand, if you don't give it any structure at all, you act like one of these hippie, do whatever you free range parents. I think what they're calling them. Just roam and do whatever you want, no boundaries at all, no
Mm,
rules. Like that's also very scary, right? It feels very unsafe to the project and to you eventually.
mm,
And so I just remember, it's like when your content, I think I called it when your content talks back. And
uh,
it's like, do you slap it in the mouth? No, you're going to like do it a little kid. No, you're going to do it just like this.
yeah,
Or do you say, fine, go do whatever you want? Or
yeah,
do you have a conversation with it
yeah.
and sit with it like a season like this and say, okay, what is this season supposed to be about? I obviously have more time than I did ever before. How is it supposed to be spent?
Yeah. That's a spacious way to view the world and your life and really relax into that because internet, instant gratification, blah, blah, right?
Mhm.
It's so much
Uh-uh.
bigger than that. It's so
Mhm.
much bigger than Amanda. Those beautiful, very tangible examples of life's much bigger overall masterpiece, which
Yeah.
is a combination of all these tiny elements put together to tell the whole story, right?
Yep.
That's not finished
Mhm.
until you die.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah. Amazing. Amazing. Is there anything else, words of wisdom, things you're looking forward to in the coming time in the next season?
Mm. I mean, what I'm really looking forward to taking all of these tools into other spaces. I think that's, I was speaking with someone this morning who has this sweet little community collective, and it's like none of them want to write books, but how can I help them with writing? And I'm thinking, oh my God, I have a whole bunch of writing quests, right?
Mhm.
I have all of these tools that can give people the opportunity to get all of this treasure out of seeing their whole story, and not just remembering the hard stuff, or not just, ignoring all the hard stuff and focusing on all the good stuff, but really seeing and appreciating the magic and the mess in their story, and the grit and the grace that's inside of them, that so that's what I'm most excited about. Every time I get to the end of a retreat or a writing quest, and I think, okay, this was freaking amazing. I mean, the people are still right now sending notes into our community board this morning about they found a journal from a retreat 2 years ago, and they were just like, look at what I did. I said this and I barely believed it then, and I am on my way to this event right now. Like, this is proof that this works. And I just think there were 12 people in that room.
Mhm.
What would happen if there were 100 people in that room,
Mhm.
right? Because that one person has
Yeah.
affected their family members, all of their friends. Like, that's what I'm looking forward to, is seeing the impact of people really learning how to wrestle with story through writing, and being in community.
Yeah. And that expands them as a person, right? So it becomes, I don't know, like a very traditional concept of storytelling around the campfire, at the main village, if you will,
Yeah.
to go back in time. Like that's it's very impactful and powerful. I'm very excited to watch what comes forward in your
Me
world
too.
now. Yeah, I'm just thrilled to have connected and
Me too.
shared.
I got the popcorn ready. I'm
Yeah,
like,
right.
let me sit
Yeah.
here. I'm ready for this movie to get started.
Woo, plot twist. Woo. And so forth. Yeah, amazing. Great. Okay, so you guys, you can follow Amanda at the Story Oracle across all platforms. And you do have a freebie for us. Do you want to share a little bit about what the freebie is? You put in
Yes.
the Saved by Story, the Story Revolution was the
Yeah. So over at Save by Story, if you savebystory.house/foreshadows,
okay.
there are the story revolution is there, which I think you would probably really dig based on our conversation about this is what I want to do, create a revolution
Yeah.
in the messenger industry. So I kind of expose all of the tyrannical stories that keep us stuck. The people, those of us who want to operate in integrity and do it a little bit differently, like these are the ceiling stories. And so that's a series of emails, but there's also other resources for people who are thinking about writing, who want to figure out, how do I use writing to save a story, to stop a story loop that is driving me crazy.
Mhm.
People who want to work on brands. So they can just go there and sign up for whatever
Awesome.
delights them.
Perfect. Beautiful. Well, thank you. I'm honored to have spent this time with you, and thanks for connecting. And I'm thrilled to see what else comes forward our way.
Thanks. Me too.